What's up everybody, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So another one that came out on the 21st of October was the newest offering from Norwegian doom metal act Sahg, Born Demon. This again comes on the 21st of October on Drakkar Entertainment. That is the first I've heard of this label. I think it might be a subsidiary of another label. Either way, that's what it comes out on. This band formed in Norway in 2004. This is their sixth album overall, and this is essentially doom metal. They have flirted with more progressive metal before and like classic heavy metal, but at its core, I would say it is definitely doom metal. I've been a fan of this band since their second album, aptly named 2. Actually, their first 3 are 1, 2, and 3. It was around Delusions of Grandeur where it kind of got a little bit more on the proggy side, and then the last one, Memento Mori, kind of returned more towards their roots in terms of just straightforward doom metal. And this one kind of does the same, except I think there's like a little bit more of a classic heavy metal sort of flavor to it. This really doesn't get flat out doomy until the title track, which is the third track on here, but the first 2 tracks, Fall Into the Fire and House of Worship, both kind of just scream like 80s heavy metal, especially Fall Into the Fire. Like that is an 80s single if I've ever heard it. Big anthemic chorus, good driving riffs to it, very organic production. Everything is sonically fucking great on here just in terms of the overall sound of this album. And there are some giant fucking classic heavy metal hooks on here. A lot of the more heavy metal tracks on here kind of reminded me of classic Ozzy, especially the song Evil Immortal. That almost sounds like fucking Bark at the Moon, albeit maybe a little bit more doomy than the original. But it has a lot to do with the vocals on here. The vocals sound very similar to Ozzy, like somewhere between Ozzy and I would say like Wino from The Obsessed and St. Vitus. I'll even say some of the songs kind of sound like modern Mastodon, except with Braun singing on all the tracks. You do get some like different vocal flavors on here, like some gang vocals and, you know, maybe some shouts here and there and some slightly more harsh vocals. But most of the time it is this very Ozzy-ish delivery, and the vocal style lends itself really well to both sides of this band, both their more classic heavy metal leaning side and their more straightforward doomy approach. The doomy side is the side I like because that is the side I kind of got used to. Songs like the title track, Salvation, Damnation, and the giant doomy closer, Destroyer of the Earth, that is absolutely what I wanted to hear from this band. They are a little bit more bleak, more descending riffs. There's a lot of stuff on here that I would say is a little bit more anthemic and more built around like big vocal hooks. But when they let the riffs get really doomy and really oppressive, you hear this darker sound that kind of fits this album cover a little bit more, because there's a lot of stuff on here that is, I wouldn't say like poppy in a bad way, but very hook laden. And I feel like that was kind of the focus on this one, is to write songs that are driven by hooks, whether it's guitar hooks or vocal hooks. I definitely think hooks were the biggest part of this, and it really shows because I think a lot of the choruses here are really good. Some of them do kind of go to the more just repeat the song title sort of motif, which it kind of grates on me after a while, but there are some really clever melodies on here, and there's a lot more going on in terms of the guitar work than say like something that is a little bit more straightforward and just sort of like geared towards mass appeal. There are more dissonant riffs sprinkled in amongst the more like hooky riffs. It kind of gives it a little bit more dark and sinister vibe, but there's also like a kind of creepy, like, I don't know, like early 70s, late 60s Hammer films sort of atmosphere to it. There are occasionally little moments in here where it's like excerpts from a sermon, but I think it's all in Norwegian, so I have no idea what the creepy pastor is saying, but everyone else is chanting back in refrain. At least that seems to be the case on Destroy the Earth, and I have no idea what they're saying, but it sounds creepy, it sounds dark, it sounds like there's like a static hiss behind it too, which, I don't know, kind of makes it sound even creepier, I guess. But you also have moments like the creepy female vocals that start off the song, Killer Spirit from Out of Hell. They're isolated, and again, there's like that sort of static hiss that's kind of covering them up, but it's just this haunting little vocal line before it goes into the song. And the song even chooses to outro on some like more Gregorian chants or something like that. It definitely just adds to the overall creepy atmosphere. And Killer Spirit is definitely like an interesting song to bring up. Like, it has kind of a Sabbathy swing to it, but there's something very similar about it, and I hated to bring up this band because I know they're very divisive, but it kind of reminds me of Ghost, albeit maybe a bit heavier and a bit darker. There is a riff progression on there that sounds a lot like the instrumental on Prequel, Miasma. And Honestly, like here it really works. Like I do like that song, and I think that saxophone solo is pretty damn cool on it. But here it just sounds like classic Black Sabbath. And again, the Ozzy love does not just extend to his solo career. There's definitely a lot of Black Sabbath on here. And that definitely extends to the guitars as well. There's definitely a lot of Iommi love in terms of the riff construction. They're dark and sinister hooks, but they're oddly very catchy. Even the end of the title track has some really cool vocal harmonies that you would maybe associate more with Queen, except this was Queen that worshipped Satan. And you even have more dreary kind of rocker songs in here. Like they're not necessarily that doomy oppressiveness. They're more or less just more up-tempo, but they're still kind of glum and melancholy. Like Black Cross on the Moon. It's an up-tempo song in terms of being like a bit faster or just like more of a strong mid-tempo stomp to it. But it feels very like reflective, very melancholy, kind of morose. And it doesn't necessarily feel like as anthemic as some of the more like straightforward like 80s rockers on here like Evil Immortal. And outside of that, there were some interesting surprises on here. The song Hexadins is, I don't know like how to describe the song. It's mostly verses that kind of tail off into like, well, them just saying the title of the song, but it's interesting how they do it. Like the verses kind of roll through and then it goes into a chorus riff, but the first part of the chorus is always different, or at least I assume so because they're speaking all in Norwegian on it. But it always ends with them saying Hexadins at the end of the verse, which essentially works as a chorus. But this song is kind of like all over the place. Like it has sort of a classic rock boogie to it, but there are some heavier riffs in it. But you also get the classic na-na-nas and like a fun little vocal harmony there. And then towards the end, they pepper in some black metal because they needed to remind us they were from Norway. In between the sort of Sabbath swing sort of rhythm in there, they pepper in some blast beats and some like dissonant tremolo riffs and then go right back to it like it never happened. And then revisit it again. And I thought that was kind of an interesting turn on here. Just, you know, peppering in that one little moment that is decidedly different than everything else in the album. Now that kind of tails into maybe a slight complaint on this one, that I think this is a little bit more stripped down than they have been. With their earlier albums, I think they were maybe just a bit more adventurous in terms of song construction and maybe like taking bridges for a walk, kind of just having fun with it. These songs feel more condensed. In fact, there are no songs on here over 4 minutes and 38 seconds, I believe. And there are songs that possibly warrant longer songs, namely the title track and the last track, Destroyer of the Earth. I think those songs could have, you know, maybe opened up a little bit more, like carried on a longer musical intro, maybe take the bridge for a walk, like I said, or maybe close in some grand crescendo. But I feel like the focus on this album was more about hooks, both again, like with the guitars and really good melodies and vocal hooks, because the vocals are very prominent on here and they do nail a lot of choruses on here. And while I like this, it does feel a little bit safe. I do like their more adventurous side. They do have songs that are over 10 minutes in their catalog and they do really well with them. They know how to write this stuff. I just feel like that was not the mode on this one. They wanted to write just some really catchy but still heavy classic sounding songs. And while this band has always had kind of a cool balance between like a classic heavy metal sound and flat out old school doom metal, I feel like it is missing a little bit of the doom, especially when you hear it come up, like especially in the last track, Destroyer of the Earth. That is the doomiest track on the album, and it's absolutely fucking amazing. In fact, that song and maybe the title track kind of stand on their own as the most bleak and oppressive songs. The rest of it is a little bit more like spooky, like it doesn't feel as ominous and as sinister as, you know, say the more doomy material. But honestly, I enjoyed pretty much every track on here. I think this is just a fun album to listen to. It's very riff driven, lots of great melodies. It's fucking fun. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I dig this. In fact, I ordered this halfway through on Amazon just because, yeah, it was really doing it for me. It has a very classic appeal. The riffs are great. The melodies are great. I think the focus on vocal hooks is a really good thing. It is kind of a drawback when it comes down to, like, you know, doing the more condensed songs. Like, I would have liked some longer songs in here like they've done in the past, but that wasn't what they were going for. I think they have a good formula here. I just feel like it's a little safe compared to what they've done in the past, but everything on here I think is really good. It isn't such a tremendous shift in style and songwriting to really alienate a fan base, so if you liked this band before, I'm reasonably sure you're gonna like this. This is a solid album, albeit like a little bit more condensed than I wanted, but I still, again, liked everything on here. So if you're a fan, again, of like The Obsessed, Saint Vitus, Ozzy, Black Sabbath, definitely check this album out and check out the rest of their albums too, because they're all really good. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Therein is a link to our Patreon, and there's also our shop there. We have t-shirts available. We will be getting some new merch eventually. Again, we're still sort of scouting around that. We've been like super busy here lately. They're still almost kind of maybe telling me no on the grenades, but all I hear are yeses and danger. So I'm just going to go ahead and say maybe grenades. And of course, thank you all so much for liking and subscribing, following, all that stuff. It has been absolutely amazing. You know, this is the thank you part of the video. I know, like, yeah, they say the same shit every time, and we probably do, but I constantly feel the need to express my gratitude, because this is absolutely amazing that I get to do this, and so many people seem to like what we're doing. I still don't get it, but there's a lot of things I don't get, like how Five Finger Death Punch has a fan base. I don't understand that shit, but good for them, I guess. But the main thing is you guys fucking rule, and we appreciate the living shit out of you. So once again, thank you, and we will catch you later.